Croft and Amy Jacobson.
Insert Democrat socialist here.
Runs the Democratic House floor for 30 plus years running. He's promising this and he's stealing that. Where can you get that kind of money? He's using your house like his own piggy bank. You ought to know by now. You can pay off your house here in Illinois, but you can never keep up with the taxes. Oh, how it's always been the plan to have a taxpayer pay, no doubt. Not a matter of if anymore, but when. You're moving out. I said when you're moving out.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Speaking of moving out, I've got the place you might consider moving to.
Yeah, what do you got for me, boss?
It's perhaps the closest thing to Galt's Gulch that exists on this mortal coil.
Okay.
It's a newly minted libertarian city in Honduras. They're calling Prospera. Here's the President Xiomara Castro on Prospera.
Destruye el Estado, de Estado.
Is this radical libertarianism? Is this anarcho-capitalism in action?
In some ways, yes, but not in the way in which those that are attacking us use the attack to try to make it seem as if there is no responsibility, that there's going to be hazardous activities, that there's going to be no consequence for harm done. It could not be further from the truth. So from that perspective, they are absolutely wrong. From the perspective of radical libertarianism, anarcho-capitalism, my reading of it is that they want to see market players and market forces be the regulators. And so this idea of using, for example, insurance companies as a way to mediate, there's no system in the world that more powerfully injects market dynamics into dealing with human relationships and commercial activity. The vision for the platform in Honduras has been to catalyze multiple hubs throughout the country that attract foreign direct investment and generate massive amounts of well-paying jobs for Hondurans in different parts of the country. Ultimately, it's about economic freedom. The main wild card is how the Honduran government chooses to proceed.
Yeah, well, that is a wild card. To be controlled in our economic pursuits is to be controlled in everything, said Hayek. And apparently President Castro has taken that to heart. How about that, Ted Dabrowski? Maybe take a virtual tour of Prospera and see if you can upgrade from the North Shore. Ted Dabrowski, President of Wirepoints, wirepoints.org, all things Illinois policy related, joins us now. Ted?
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Amy. No, I haven't followed Prospera, but I do like the name, a little bit of prosperity. I haven't followed it. Sounds really interesting, though.
Yeah, well, certainly.
I'm watching the video of it right now. It looks
pretty
nice.
Tropical. I mean, Honduras is one of the poor countries in Central America, but you put a little Hong Kong in the middle of Honduras, we'll see what happens if the Honduran government can keep their grubby hands off of this innovation by the people of Prospera. I love it.
Well, we know the Hispanics are very very entrepreneurial, and they like opportunity. So, but as most of those countries are, they're poor and deeply corrupt in many ways. So it's really hard for the average Joe to figure it out. So
I know, which is
Chicagoans would fit in. I mean, the high crime there, people getting carjacked. I'm watching the video.
Well, which is why this Prospera idea now at least partially a reality, which is why it's so impressive.
Well, yeah, I mean, the level of cronyism is fantastic. I spent a good bit of time in Latin America, South America, and it's just so deeply rooted, all the way down the system. It's hard to make do.
Wait, are we still talking about Honduras, or are you talking about Chicago? Did you switch over and I missed it?
Well, it's funny. I spent a lot of time in third world countries, working in their markets and stuff, and I always argue that Illinois is like a third world country, but everything is legalized. All the corruption is legalized, and that's That's how it works. In those countries, it's illegal, but everybody does it. Here they figured out how to legalize most things.
So prosperity is not a term that's associated with Illinois very often. I mean, except when you're hearing Pauls like Jelly Belly propagandize about hotel receipts and things like this. Look over here, don't look over here where all the action is. You note that we see in the laboratories of democracy around the country, a lot of states moving to lessen the tax burden on their residents, but Illinois is not included.
Yeah, it's fascinating. In the last 3 years, you've had massive drops in taxes across the country. 24 states have permanently cut taxes. And I'm talking about income taxes right now. Texas is joining in, cutting property taxes as well just now. So it's a huge move across the country. And you have to remember that 8 states have zero taxes, so they can't lower anymore income taxes. I'm speaking. So it's been a big move, and it's really interesting even to look right next door. Iowa is moving to a 3.9% flat tax by 2026. So they're dumping the progressive tax, which is what Pritzker wants, and moving to a flat tax in Iowa, 3.9%, much lower than here. Michigan has cut their flat tax to 4.05. Indiana is cutting their flat tax to 3.15. Kentucky cutting its flat tax to 4.5. Even Missouri, which still has a progressive scheme, is cutting their top bracket to effectively the same as Illinois at 4.95. So there's moves all over the country, and people are taking states are taking all that flush, the money that they're flush with after all that COVID money, and they're giving taxpayers a break, but not in Illinois.
Yeah, we'll never see that here.
No,
with property taxes or state income tax, it'll never happen.
No, it's going to be the opposite, Amy. Everything I'm looking at right now is the pension discussions finally coming back, and you're looking at businesses leaving. All the statistics are pointing really in a really ugly way, and so we're back to the same doom thing that I can only see big property tax hikes and no relief at all.
So, Ted, I wanted to ask you about the case against Jenny Thornley, and if you could give us a backstory quickly on that and what's happening with the investigation. I remember asking Pritzker a few times, and his face, he would just get nervous and end the press conference right away and walk out every time I asked a question about it.
Yeah, this is an interesting story. This Jenny Thornley, she's a former state employee, and she was a former campaign worker for Pritzker. And so she, at some point, sued her boss, this guy named Jack Garcia.
This is at the state police board.
State police, correct,
yeah.
Correct. And so she sues this guy Jack Garcia and claims sexual harassment, and eventually it's found that harassment was not true. Several different reports, independent reports, have found that out. Now, on that harassment claim, she files for workers' compensation claims, and she gets the Pritzker administration to help her. And so, even though it's found that her whole claim was faulty and false, she still keeps getting the money, and she still kept getting the money. And so the question has become, why did Pritzker intervene and help her get that, and why hasn't it been taken away? And nobody's challenging it. And Kwame Raoul, the Attorney General, has refused to dig deep. When he was asked about it, Amy, I don't know if it was you that asked, but when he and Pritzker have been asked, they've laughed it off. And it's a question that just sits there and remains unsolved. And there's been a whistleblower to complain about it, but nothing has happened. So we keep reporting on it, seeing if others will grab onto it, but we'll have to wait and see.
So the workers' comp claim was based on harm that she supposedly suffered from that harassment that really didn't happen?
From the harassment, correct. The very harassment that had no basis.
Right, so, debunked by an independent investigation by a law firm, as well as a law firm the governor's office recommended, then by an Illinois State Police investigation. So,
and Garcia can't get his job back.
Well, he's got another job now in law enforcement, but it's his reputation that's the issue. And the other thing too is, again, the lack of accountability. Nobody's asking the questions. We talked about this actually last year during the campaign. So why did Jenny Thornley feel comfortable going to both Jelly Belly and his wife for help? Why did they intervene? Why, if she committed work comp fraud, which she did, is there not accountability there coming from the governor's office? What exactly is the nature of the relationship between Jenny Thornley and the Pritzkers, where she is getting special treatment by law enforcement when you include Kwame Raoul, and this is not dissimilar to Merrick Garland and Hunter Biden.
Yeah, this is a similar story, and there's enough there for lots of questions to be asked at a minimum. And so, the question is why isn't the mainstream media asking the questions? But it goes back to the same old thing. Everybody wants to be in the club. They want to be invited to the dinner parties and the press conferences, so they're not challenging. And it's something we try to keep alive. It deserves a fair discussion. Let Pritzker defend it. Let Pritzker's administration defend it. But he hasn't been forced to, so here we are.
You mentioned pensions are back on the table. We've talked about this for years now, that the worst funded pensions in the state, at least big pension funds, municipal pension funds, Chicago, fire and police. So where do those stand at present? We're always warning about this, and as we've said many times, just don't think people will believe a pension fund can fail until one does. But the actuarial tables tell us Chicago police and fire pensions are going to fail at some point. There's only so much sleight of hand you can do to keep those afloat.
Well, I think if there are pension plans that will fail of any scale, they'd have to be Chicago's. Chicago's are by far the worst. We looked at all the largest funds, those over $1 billion in assets across the country. And one way to look at it is to see just how much cash they have relative to an annual payout they have to make to all their pensioners. And it's by far, these funds are by far the most, we call it illiquid. They don't have money. And so the only way they survive is by taking more and more of the city budget. So you've got, this is a standard, it's called, that's too wonky, but asset, how much in assets do they have versus an annual payout? Chicago's at the bottom of the barrel. They have like 3.4 years left for the firefighters fund, where a good fund would have 20 years worth of payouts just sitting there available for use. So it's hard to see a way out of the pension crisis. Of course, bailouts are always helpful. More money from the state. Money's fungible, so if the state can figure out how to give the money there, but the state's running out of money too, so at least from a pension perspective. So this is a really complex issue, and everybody's going to lose, but in particular, if you care about public safety, these policemen and firemen, they should be screaming and jumping up and down, because the way this is going without reforms, they're going to be the first ones to take a big hit.
Well, and that 3.5 years that they're projected to have, that's based on certain assumptions like compounded annual return on investment. The problem is, though, the benefits that have been conferred just outpace the ability to pay. I mean, this is a point you've made for years. It's not just we're short funding or we're skipping payments on the pensions. I mean, that certainly exacerbates it. But just structurally, you are conferring benefits you cannot reasonably finance.
Yeah, that's been the big issue. Too much government, too many units of government, too many people, and the benefits get bigger and bigger all the time. And right now it's getting worse for Chicago because they're trying to right a different wrong. Those are the Tier 2 pension benefits. Tier 2 are the people who get pensions since 2011. That pension plan is grossly unfair compared to the first pension, the normal pension plan, and so now the politicians are trying to give the Tier 2 workers even more benefits, improve their cost of living adjustments and things like that, which makes the hole in Chicago even bigger. So then you tie back our whole discussion on crime and on education and people leaving and all that, and it's that doom loop we've talked about. I don't see how we get out of it, but right now with the COVID money, it hasn't been a discussion, but it's coming back, and it's coming back pretty strongly. The rating agencies are suddenly warning about it after 3 years of not talking about it.
Ted Dabrowski, president of Wirepoints.org, all things Illinois policy related. Ted, thanks as always.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Have you been struggling to find an easy, safe, and secure document scanning solution for Salesforce